We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere, make no mistake. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass.
We love the open county of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right.
We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle as we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere, make no mistake. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass.
We love the open county of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right.
We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one
This is Quincy Anderson. You know I love my country. There's no other country better than mine. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil too. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Hey, hey, Guyana is nice, Guyana is fun, Guyana is clean, Guyana is green, Guyana got oil, Guyana got gold, Guyana got young and Guyana got old. I ain't talking no more. Guyana got things, we growing wings and developing things. The government real and that's a big deal. I'm singing from my heart, Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil too. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I... This is Quincy Anderson. You know I love my country. There's no other country better than mine. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil too. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Hey, hey, Guyana is nice, Guyana is fun, Guyana is clean, Guyana is green, Guyana got oil, Guyana got gold, Guyana got young and Guyana got old. I ain't talking no more. Guyana got things, we growing wings and developing things. The government real and that's a big deal. I'm singing from my heart, Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil to one Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I... This is Quincy Anderson. You know I love my country. There's no other country better than mine. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil to one Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Hey, hey, Guyana is nice, Guyana is fun, Guyana is clean, Guyana is green, Guyana got oil, Guyana got gold, Guyana got young and Guyana got old. I ain't talking no more. Guyana got things, we growing wings and developing things. The government real and that's a big deal. I'm singing from my heart, Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil to one Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I...
We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Big mistake. Cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we.
I hope we can have a short press conference today. Um, I see smiles. I think people would be happy with that. Um, so let me start by congratulating President Irfan Ali for hosting a large number of international meetings successfully here in Guyana. I wish to thank the government officials and thousands of other Guyanese who've worked to make these several international engagements a success. In the past 2 weeks, we've been able to project Guyana globally. What are the challenges before our country and the opportunities here? And we've been able to give most of those who've visited Guyana a more nuanced understanding of our development path and our plans to bring prosperity to all of our people. From the energy conference, although that was not organized by the government, but the government was heavily involved, we had a large number of international investors and opinion makers, some of the biggest banks and funds in the world that operate at a different level. And I think they left Guyana with clarity from the government as to our policies. And this comes at a premium. It's not many countries that have been able to define clearly where they're going and how they're going to get there. We know about the disastrous past with APNU, where people came to similar conferences of this nature and they were totally dissatisfied. No, not a minister could have spoken and given clear answers to any of the questions raised. We had open sessions where people could have asked any questions and they all had a clear answer from the government of Guyana. So the hosting President Lula and CARICOM, the president of the Inter-American Development Bank, and several bilateral delegations in Guyana from the UK, from Canada, from almost everywhere in the world. We had the Saudis here, a delegation from UAE. They allowed Guyana to deal with a large number of very topical issues globally, including the governance crisis in Haiti, um, the horrible situation in Gaza. The CARICOM heads came out with a very strong statement on that issue. On the issue of climate change, there were extensive discussions, economic growth, access to financing, reform of institutions and their instruments to make them more fit for purpose, particularly for the developing world, food security, digitization of economies. All of these were just some of the topics discussed. In the bilateral programs, you heard this morning from President Ali and President Lula about discussions to advance transport, infrastructure generally, um, food security, energy cooperation, and defense. These are some of the areas identified but in the bilateral meeting for further cooperation. So, as you can see, a large number of issues were discussed. Very, very important issues, not only for Guyana, but the rest of the world. We have we've seen recently, so let me transition from that quickly. Once again, I want to congratulate all the people who participated fully. There are thousands of Guyanese who I saw doing different things, and they all contributed to making this or these activities a success. It's been a busy 2 weeks for the country. On the sidelines, we've seen APNU, their usual stuff. So, so whilst all of this was happening, Hamilton Green said, you know, APNU should rig elections to stay in office. Then Norton and the others defended that position. Last week I spoke on it briefly. And then the plot changes again. This week, in an interview with Stabrook News, Hamilton Green said he apologized for the Reagan remarks. He said they were not intended. But Stabrook News did a great job, I think, and they went back to 2020 when he urged Granger to put aside the Constitution and put aside the laws so he could rig the elections. So you could see that it was not, and then when Stabrook News had asked him at that time, he said it was a slip of the tongue. So at that time, the Reagan comments was a slip of the tongue. Now it's unintended, his Reagan comments. Can't you see that this is embedded in his DNA? It's what inside that comes out. It's in his DNA. And so don't listen to him about slip of tongue or he didn't mean it. He meant every word he said. And APNU believes in Reagan election. So contrary to all that Norton has been saying, we know that this is part of their history and also the DNA of that party. And they're unwilling in this modern age to move away from Reagan elections. They've already started, as I said before, making excuses as to the why they would lose the next elections. So no one should take Hamilton Green seriously. This guy was part of that machinery in the past, and he believes every word that he said. It's not unintended. I just want to, Norton released a long interview he had with America's Quarterly from New York. And so it's an extensive interview. And if you want to see poor leadership, just look at this. He rambled through the entire interview. He didn't have a coherent thought. He didn't have a coherent thought in the whole interview. So his usual thing, oh, the gold scholarship is not structured and it's bad. It's not good for the country. It's not intended, it's not delivering the intended results. 21,000 people are studying on gold scholarship. Another 6,000 this year would be added. That will be 27,000 Guyanese. But he sees it as bad. Said the poverty rate has increased to 42%. This is in his imagination. He came up with this number. He says the government is going to be faced with increased demand with all of these foreigners here for food. And therefore, we are not focusing on food production. This guy says we're not focusing on food production. This is the party that cut the budget for drainage and irrigation, for farm to market roads, that the president who told the rice farmers this is private business, put taxes on fertilizer, on pesticides, on machinery and equipment for agriculture. He talks about food production. Food production has expanded almost in every area, including in new areas to hydroponics, supplying green leafy vegetables, soya, corn, the expansion of the poultry industry, the expansion of breeding animals for almost every sector, even in small husbandry, like the small ruminants as well as the large ones. I can go down the long list, but that's what he says. That we have no plan for electricity generation, but we're building a 300 megawatts power plant. We have no development plan whatsoever. The interviewer said, but they have a manifesto and they're implementing their manifesto. And he said, well, not everything in their manifesto, but you look at our record. 95% of what we promised to the country, we implemented. Then he said there was a national development strategy, and maybe that needs to be updated. So the interviewers asked him, which party developed this national development strategy? And he then said, oh, it was done by a party. Well, if it fell out the sky and landed on Guyana's lap. I remember the National Development Strategy, the first draft was a government document because I was placed in charge of delivering that document to Dr. Jagan. I showed you a picture here the day I handed it over to him in 2005. And then we got civil society to look at the original draft and share their views. We are the ones who tabled it in the parliament. It was done by the PPP. He is saying that we need to update it, but no party did the national development strategy. When pressed about this, he jumped to no urban planning. Well, if there's no urban planning, these are the people who control the city. It's the PNC who control the city since independence. They control Linden and New Amsterdam, almost all the towns. There's no urban planning and a breach of the regulations. Then which party actually did this? It's the PNC. So it would be good to look at how he rambles, reinforcing our point that they have no coherent view on anything. He didn't have a view on oil and gas too. So from his long interview, the interview is released now. I think a few days ago they put it on. But the article was published since January based on that interview. And from his, I don't know if close on our interview, he had 2 sentences in an 18 pages article from his long interview. So that interview is just a tape version of what the interviewer didn't use any of it. This is 18 pages, a report on it, an article on it, and they put just 2 sentences from his whole nearly 1 hour interview because it was a waste of time. Waste of the interviewer's time. Total waste. Rambling. So it's a shameful thing to put up an interview like that. I'd be hiding it if it was so disastrous for us. So they had a press conference today again, and the usual thing. So they are what we thought was isolated from the city council to block the development in the city. With the new hotel, anyone who visited the Marriott Hotel would have seen how we have outgrown that hotel. There's no space in the hotel to host any conference or anything anymore. They would have recognized the need to do that. This country is changing. You have to cater for all sorts of activities that bring benefits to the people of this country. This hotel will cost over $300 million of private money. It will be a 5-star hotel, the only one in the country, and one of the few in the region. it shall have convention space 5 times that of the Marriott Ballroom. Um, they, they, what will happen at the end of the construction? You'll have at least 500 Guyanese who will have permanent jobs there. Like the Marriott now, and you go there and see all those people working. It was the same APNU that was opposed to the building of that hotel. They had to eat their words. Kaicho News, all of the APNU, AFC, Christopher Ram had to eat their word. They said it would be a white elephant project. It will in it will not be feasible. They will turn it into a hospital. Today, it's one of the most profitable hotels anywhere. The value saw that from the bid that we received, which was nearly twice the cost of its construction. And it replaced the dump site. And thousands and hundreds of Guyanese are working there now. It's this narrow mindedness now. We hear about the green space again. Oh, they, so don't worry. They dug up some old document from some archive that neither the city councilors or the PNC can't read. We have had the people, the lawyers and lands and survey, the people who are specialized in this area, produce the documentation about ownership, and the project is moving forward. So this is like everything else. We hear complaints about it. We hear complaints. I saw a Starbuck News editorial, oh, the Qataris are going to do another stadium in Region 3, and we have one in 6, and it may be underutilized. We heard the same thing about the Providence Stadium. But the stadium across the river is a gift from the Qataris, that they are dismantling the ones that they built for World Cup, and they're going to give us a gift. It's not public money. The one in Berbice is built by the, not from revenue, but by the oil and gas companies. It's built by them. So we are not utilizing revenue to build these facilities, but they will be game changers for the people who live in these regions. The regions 5 and 6 would have access there. Region 4 already has access, and Region 3. And we're upgrading the one in Anna Regina too. We did two facilities in Linden. So right across the country, our people would have great access to good quality infrastructure. Infrastructure. This is important for us. But the gripers are at it again. Oh, we don't need another hotel, too many hotels in the city, etc. People are putting their money into building these hotels. They're taking a risk. And these hotels will make a big difference to people. I heard a lot of I saw a lot written about book value and market value of the company in Guyana, the Exxon, the Stabroek Block Development, and some people just don't understand the difference between the two concepts. So I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not going to spend today educating them. The I just did, I looked at the press conference. So I've gone through 4 pages already, and I don't think I've seen anything that is worth responding to, because it's the usual nonsense, the usual. But the most interesting one is APNU saying he's committed to not, they're not committed to rigging the 2025 elections, whether we will commit to the same thing. And the answer is yes, Mr. Norton. We will commit to that. That's why we started inviting the international observers, so they can be here very, very early. So it's a strange. And next one is that if they tell the country who their oil and gas advisors are, then the PPP will steal their ideas. Since when do we steal ideas from APNU? But they can't tell you who their advisors are. The reporter asked, who are your advisors on oil and gas? And Norton said, oh, a lot of them are international advisors, etc. But we can't tell your ideas because PPP will steal them. What sort of juvenile kind of opposition leader we have? Only an infantile, approach to this serious development matters would contemplate this sort of answer. It's utter nonsense. They, you, you have to compete with your ideas. You have to compete with people, not on racism all the time or lies. There, this week again, there were they met with the US delegation and they were using the same old language that served them well in 2015. Oh, we were associated with drug dealers, we're corrupt. But people are laughing at them now. That served them well in a different era. As we approach the 2015 elections, that used to be their mantra. Oh, the PPP is linked with drug dealers, they're incompetent, we'll do a better job, we deliver the good life for all, that sort of thing, that they're corrupt. People saw them in office for 5 years, the most corrupt government. They've seen now how we have to rectify a lot of the corruption that took place in the past through public tenders. At least you have public tenders now. They didn't have public tenders for many of those big infrastructure. They didn't submit their statements to the Integrity Commission. And if anyone is linked with drug dealers, you check the AFC leaders and APNU leaders who consort with people a lot. So they think that they go and complain to the US again about their old rhetoric. The DA is here, and they know this. And they know this. So they old sort of rhetoric. And by the way, do you know that Mr. Norton and a team from with him went to Africa recently? That the PNC team that went there met with in Nigeria about 6 or 7 of them, and they were meeting with private business there and saying to this APNU team and saying to people they can give them concessions here when they win the elections. They're misleading those people to think that they will win here, so, and collecting money. So I hope that Mr. Norton and the others are careful, because this, we believe, is a form of corruption. That you're selling future government policies. We believe that doing that is a corrupt activity. And secondly, I hope that the resources they're collecting would go to the PNC coffers, because from what I gather, it may go to individuals. But this just happened quietly. If they're so transparent, the next press conference you ask them which businesses they met with in Nigeria, which companies, and what did they say to the companies, and how many are interested in oil and gas concessions here, and how much, if they received any money from them. They just came back actually a few weeks ago. So Norton was talking about that. And then I don't know, this reporter needs an award, who asked Norton about to provide the SOPs and the elusive SOPs. I don't know who did. And Norton, how can an SOP prove that you rigged an election? The PVP rigged the 20 election. The recount showed that this guy is the whole question of SOPs, an old Jagdeo stupid question. You know, he loses it when asked to produce the evidence. He loses it. That is a stupid Jagdeo question. They remember they claim that they had the SOPs that showed they won the elections. They never had those. They had the SOPs that showed they lost the elections. And yet they took this country through the trauma of 5 months and nearly stole the election several times. So we had to fight those off. Um, Norton addressed the nation too. I looked at his address to the nation on the teachers issue, and he had nothing to say on the teacher strike. And I think his intent was to mask the political nature of the strike that has been progressively coming to the fore. The secret meetings that they have had with the leadership of the union and other unions, urging them to take industrial action, even when discussions were taking place between the Ministry of Education and the teachers union. So you would recall that the last meeting took place on the 31st of January between the teachers and the ministry. Earlier, the teachers union had written to the ministry and they had solved, as you had seen, about 20 something, 27 or 41 issues already. So that engagement was taking place. The last meeting took place on that date. They agreed to meet continuously every third Wednesday. So they would have had the next meeting on the 21st of February. And then the teachers went on strike. They wrote the Ministry of Labor, which is the authorized agency under the collective bargaining agreement, to deal with a breakdown of the talks. So they wrote the ministry, they recognized that the ministry and the chief labor officer had that role, and they asked for conciliation. And the chief labor officer wrote them saying, the talks are still ongoing, you have not reached the stage of conciliation. When they received that letter, they withdrew it and then wrote immediately for arbitration. So the grievance procedure as outlined in the collective bargaining agreement has not been followed, and it's ongoing. So the government of Guyana doesn't believe, and that's it, because we see some attempt to get to mediation through the courts, does not believe that the established process under the law and under the employer-employee relationship through the collective bargaining agreement has been exhausted, as outlined by the chief labor officer. So this is a very important issue. Now, much has been written about the interim conservatory order that was issued by the court. And let me just say this. Darren Wade did not win a case before the court. What happened is the court did not hear the matter. The judge issued the order, an interim order, and he set up a date by which the documents would have to be filed, and then the hearing will take place. So the union did not win through their lawyer any case. There was no hearing. It's just went to the judge, they presented their arguments. The judge, we asked to be heard. The judge said, you'll get an opportunity to do that, and that will be set for a later time. So we intend to follow the interim order. The order says that we shall not deduct money from those who are striking at this point in time, pending the hearing of the case. We don't know what the outcome will be. But let me just make it clear. We will continue to collect information on those who are absenting themselves from the classroom, the teachers. Because somehow this order was conceived of in some quarters, and the union has actively peddled that you will be paid even if you don't work. And that may be so in this period pending the hearing of the case. But the administration, our administration, has been advised by the lawyers, by a number of, and this is a number of lawyers, not just the AG's chamber, that the laws of Guyana do not support the principle where you don't work and you will be paid. In fact, the laws of Guyana confirm if you don't work, you will not be paid. They advised us, they shared with us opinions, not opinions, case history from the Privy Council, which upheld that principle. No work, no pay. Explicitly put by the highest courts in a jurisdiction, for many Caribbean jurisdictions, the Privy Council is the highest. And so we have precedent to this already. So they will continue to collect information on those who are absenting themselves from the classroom. My fear is that they're misleading teachers into believing that the matter is resolved and they can strike as long as they wish and they will be paid forever. We believe, based on what we have seen, the president, that this matter will be determined in favor of the principle that has long been established, and the deductions, if taken at that time, would be harsher for the teachers. I'm urging the teachers not to be misled by what you hear from the union. You've heard so many misleading things already. So for those who believe that that they can strike forever and they would receive pay forever, imagine the common sense of that argument. It's just a commonsensical. If people can withdraw labor forever, I said this before, and be paid for it, then who will work? If you can strike, you don't need to show up 365 days a year. You say, I'm on strike, and then you get paid for all 365 days in a year. Why would anyone anywhere in the world work? Common sense. So, Norton's address was designed to really hide the strong political influence behind the teacher strike. We know of it. Norton can't hide from that. Um, I saw something. The Starbuck News is not here today, but I saw this letter. I don't know why a newspaper, a serious newspaper like Starbuck News, would publish such a long letter from some person named Candice Dorwish to say Natural Resource Fund appears to be missing 27 million. Appears to be missing 27 million. The Minister of Finance told me it's utter crap, nonsense. And you publish a letter from someone who, just a Darwish, a big letter like this on on an important issue like this one, without even calling, having the courtesy of calling the Ministry of Finance or the central bank. This is this is really, really, you have nothing to publish in a newspaper. It's it's I don't even know where people get this. This is such a flawed kind of analysis. It's like conjecture. Anybody, a lunatic could write anything. 100 million it disappears, etc. Appears to be missing. Appears to be missing. So you can already the damage is done when you go and correct it, which could have been done in 5 minutes to say it to the Minister of Finance. And then if you call him and he says it's nonsense and you later prove him wrong, then you have a story. But this is the usual thing every single day. And what this does is just reinforce the impression. Oh, it falls straight into the Kaito news that, oh, they're thieving the oil money now. It's a lie. No 27 million is missing. It must be written by Glenn Lal. Or, no, this is too complex language for him. I think it might be someone else. I think a lot of it, some of these things here, I must say something that I see Kaicho News talk of presidentially large and world's little where action is necessary. And he mentioned the president said 11 times commitment in his Republic Day address. I think they have and mention about secrecy and commitment, lack of commitment by the president and the government. I think they have a problem with strong leadership. President Ali is a strong leader. He speaks forcefully because he's convinced that he's working for the people of this country and he can be substantiated by facts. When he speaks about commitments 11 times, this we can point out to 100 commitments that we've made and we've fulfilled in the 3.5 years we've been in government. 100. And by contrast, zero on the APNU. We committed, I told you about the scholarships. 20,000 we committed in our manifesto. We're at 27,000 this year, and we have another year to go before the elections next year. That's a commitment to the people of this country. And there are 27,000 real people now, real people who are studying. We promised to accelerate the training of people. Last 2 years, 2,000 teachers have been trained at Cyril Potter College of Education. That was part of our promises. We promised to start auctioning future blocks. We did that. We promised local content legislation. We promised cheaper electricity, the gas to energy project. We're working on it. We promised to reform the Natural Resources Fund. We have done this. We promised to double old age pension in the 5 years. We will do it. We promised to give the children their grant back and to increase it to 50,000. We will do it. We promised 50,000 house lots. We're already at 30,000. there. We promised the joint services, the bonus back. We did it. We promised to remove VAT on water, electricity, and all the other items. We did it. We promised the miners to revise the tax laws. We did so. I can go down. Why you think he could speak about commitment? But they have a big concern about it. If you want to talk specifics, this is what this government has been about. And the others can complain about roads. So Norton said, oh, the Sheriff Street, we don't have a plan for roads in the city. We're just widening roads. But under them, you wouldn't even had a road paved. They were interested in different things. We've just outlined to the Brazilian the massive infrastructural plan we have to coordinate links in the Guyana Shield. They were very impressed with it. And this has happened in 3.5 years. In 3.5 years. Just the East Bank corridor or going up to Linden in the Linden-Soestdijk Highway. It's unbelievable. Look at the commitment on healthcare and expanding healthcare. So President Ali can speak not 11 times in his New Year's address about commitment. He could speak 100 times and be credible. And be credible. But they have a big beef about that. About strong leadership. And oh, we are secretive. You ask how many press conferences of this nature that APNU had in the 5 years in government. You ask about the 5 years in government. How many questions, how many times Kaichor News asked them about oil and gas? They couldn't get Trotman to talk about it, not Harman, not Granger, not anyone in the government. We're now fed up with the same questions over and over again. And no doubt they'll come just now again to the same thing. And getting tired of the questions now. I hear them so many times and answer them so many times too. And they're just not getting the answer that they want. So they keep bringing it back. It's not going to change the answer if you're hoping that that will happen. So talking about secrecy, as I said before, the Integrity Commission has been restored, the submission of statements. Public tender, they complain, oh, secrecy, we awarded some contract, this contract, a water contract to Critic. It was publicly tendered. These things are publicly tendered. And you can investigate it too, as it's being done. There's a complaint and it's being investigated by the Public Procurement Commission. That would have never happened under APNU. That would never have happened. You think you could have said that Patterson awarded the contract. In fact, there was an investigation by the police and they absolved him from it when he took an unsolicited bid to the cabinet. And the laws of Guyana said that a bid can only originate from the tender board, not from a minister, because the cabinet did not have the right of approval and does not have the right of approval of contracts. I took that out when I was president. They have a no objection rule. And the no objection rule can only be exercised in a particular manner. They have to state the reason why and send it back to the procurement authority. They can't give it to somebody else. So that is how the law should operate. You think you could have even raised that under APNU? Look at the stadium. You tell me what procurement rule they had for the 1.6 billion that they spent on the stadium. Not stadium, more the Durban Park, yes. I call it stadium, all the thing. That's a misnomer. Yes. So talking about and that's not such a long memory, you know. It's a short period back. It's just 3.5 years back that we're there. But they're changing the whole narrative. And the comparisons, we stand up well. That's why President Ali can speak with such forcefulness. I know a lot of them are upset with that GHK Lal and everybody. I saw he had an editorial on President Ali or whatever, he could do that in a credible way. We can do it because we have lived that. I'm going to end there. Thanks. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams, Guyana Chronicle.
Yes.
Although Guyana has been making a name for itself on the international stage and even attracting the eyes of investors,
What?
we
What can?
can you hear me?
Yes, yes. You
Okay.
said the word at the beginning. Who has been making it?
I said although Guyana
Oh,
has been
although Guyana. Oh, I thought you name a company. Okay, although Guyana has been,
yes,
yes. Okay.
although Guyana has been making a name for itself on the international stage.
Catch News got a pen there. You won't lend me your pen there. You don't have a pen? Well, you're worse off than us here. Glenal pay you. I thought Glenal paying you a big salary there too. Charging big salaries for public servant. Yes, go. Yes, okay. Go
Yes,
on.
although Guyana has been making a name for itself on the international stage and even attracting the eyes of investors, this morning the opposition would have said that the way the PPP is governing is bad for investors. Can you reflect on how this government has transformed the investment climate? Question just now.
Yeah, well, that's why, of necessity, as General Secretary of the party, the PVP, I have to respond to Norton, but it's not a task that I relish because, as I said before, there is nothing of substance that I can address because he does not speak about policies. It's these wild statements that are far divorced from facts. So if you look at the growth of investments in this country, in almost every single area in the past 3.5 years, you've seen they've skyrocketed. We even had to say to our missions abroad that the initial approach in the earlier periods when we were in office, where economic diplomacy and mobilizing investment was a critical task of the foreign missions, that they have to be cautious now as to the mobilization of investors because we're already overloaded and we didn't want the economy to overheat. So they had to be very strategic with guidance from the capital as to which sorts of investments we want, because we want more targeted forms of investments. So we move beyond even just mobilizing investments in a broad fashion to now, because we can now pick and choose because we're in this enviable position compared to other countries that are not getting investors. And you just look at the regional example or the global example. So just look at hotel development. We have about 10 hotel projects. Which country in this hemisphere or any part of the world, maybe the big countries, now can boast 10 new hotels being developed? Nowhere at this pace in just a few years. Nowhere in the developing world this is happening. Look at the expansion in agriculture. We've had investors from every part of the world. Israel, from the Middle East, from Argentina, from Brazil, the local investors investing heavily in agriculture, in the intermediate savannas, in hydroponics, improving the productivity of our agriculture. We have a ton of investors there in agriculture. In infrastructure, we're overloaded with people who are coming now to not just announce access. Look at the minister this week, the minister from the UK. who came here, the sidelines of the CARICOM uh, conference of heads of government, to announce the increase in access to financing to Guyana to $2 billion from UKEF. And he spoke about the massive changes, the growth here, the transformation. This is the UK minister. You have ministers from every part of the world. You listen to CARICOM heads, you hear the IMF say the same thing about the dynamism in our economy, etc. And then you listen to the pipsqueak Norton. You know, who would you believe? And he's not even coherent. He has no facts to demonstrate anything of that nature. So this is I how could why do I have to defend something that is so evident that he doesn't see it? And if he says it, he needs to understand he will lose credibility because you're pushing against such obvious facts on the ground. Everybody sees it. That is what what happened.
Okay, and my second question is, we would have seen the APNU and AFC have differing views on some serious issues. Do you think that this sort of disunity would further cripple them?
AP and UNAFC. I don't think they have serious differences in views. I think the AFC has long lost credibility. You have to remember how the AFC emerged. The AFC emerged claiming that they wanted to change the politics of Guyana, that the political landscape historically has been dominated by the two major parties, PPP and PNC. And they were bringing a new culture to politics. And that the PPP is racist, corrupt, incompetent, and ultimately they had to join with the PNC to change the political culture. The AFC turned out to be the most unprincipled set of leaders we have ever seen. They were involved in some of the most egregious scandals, even more than PNC ministers. That's one. Two, they were more vocal than some PNC persons in trying to rig the elections. One just needs to recall Nagamotu, Ramjatan, Kati Hughes, all of these people, and Patterson. The extreme they went to justify the rigged elections, inventing plots that we brought in Russians to rig the vote and everything like that. So they have no credibility whatsoever. Everything that they said to people on the ground, that is the problem with these so-called third forces. They come in lofty, etc. Or we believe in unity, national unity. Not a word came out of the AFC. The AFC got a lot of sugar workers' votes. And when 7,000 sugar workers were sent home, when they got zero salary increase for 5 years, Ramjatan and Nagamotu justified this. Not just stayed quietly or stayed quiet, they justified having to do that. So they're spineless, AFC is corrupt, has no vision. They're part of the rigging gang. This disassociation from what Hamilton Green said is just part of a show. They need to recreate, they're hoping they can recreate that independent identity because they were submerged in this cesspool called APNU AFC governance. And they're hoping to recreate an identity to mislead people once again. And that is why they're taking positions that seem independent, but it's all part of a plot. It's all part of the plot. They're the same thing. Just watch the lapdog type of behavior from the AFC leadership when they're in parliament, etc. Everything. I had to point that out just a here. How once they took Ramjatan to a press conference, and he was 4 times he spoke, and all 4 times he said, "I support what Mr. Norton said. I endorse what Mr. Norton said," etc. On 4 issues, all four. They don't have a separate existence. They're just trying to create the impression. And this is the problem with third forces all the time, the so-called third forces. We have demonstrated that throughout our history, we fight for a single cause, bringing people together, progress for all of our country. We have a plan to do so. All of these, some of the small parties too. Look at look at look at what they always start off. They're different, and then they turn out worse than even the two parties, including the APNU. When you get worse than the PNC, is you're in bad shape. And I think AFC is, they have less of a history and they're more spineless, and 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 more, uh, frankly speaking, many times we prefer to deal with the PNC. At least it has a track record of being, um, you know, being part of our history. And even though they rigged elections, they were part of our party one time. We were the same party before it split.
Okay, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, Sheriff and Borough of Culture News. The government has announced plans to proceed with a third audit of the expenses in the Starbrook block. But when will the first one done by IHS Market be made public? And can you give us an update on the status of the 240 million US dollar cost that is in dispute?
Well, I've answered this question many times. I said any document that is in the public domain or with the GRA could choose to make those public or not, the audits. Okay, that's one. I've said that historically. I think most people by now have the audits. Okay, that's one. Secondly, there was the difference in opinion. We've made it clear that there is a process through which you finalize this, which would ultimately be arbitration. That's a final element. You can appoint an industry expert, but if that fails, you go to arbitration. And that's where we are. So there is an intractable difference between us now. We, over the full $214 million of expenses. So that will finally have to be resolved, not through a bilateral process any longer, but through that third party involvement, which is provided for. The second audit, they would still have to now, when written to, they would have to now give explanations for the areas identified. For example, the auditors said that they were commingling expenditures for the Stabroek block, Kaitshore, and Kanji block. They have to demonstrate that they were not doing so, that they're not putting expenses on the Stabroek block where the services were given to the Kanji and Kaitshore block. There are lots of other features. So that's, in a nutshell, arbitration, in a nutshell.
Just to be clear, we have been trying to get these documents from GRA, but up to now, it's we're not getting it, and it's kind of unfair for the people to be left in the dark, knowing how your company is spending.
You got the second audit, though. You got the second one. All right. So if you get the second one, you could get the first one.
Okay.
When you get the first one and that one, right?
But it's kind of difficult. Probably
that
could
one
put in a word
because
for
that one was done by APNU, right? When things are done by the PPP, you get it. You remember the privatization? We published a document in 2012 that showed every privatization from 1992 to 2012, and it's tabled in the parliament. every single privatization we did. That's PPP for transparency there. We had every account audited from 1992 to now. So all the things that we promise also to put the environmental permits that APNU wasn't putting up, we load them on our site. The licenses for all the FPSOs that we have licensed, we put those on the website. We've done a lot of that. So let me find out if why this one
Okay.
is not in the public domain.
You said more than once that Guyana is giving up billions. This is on the ring fencing issue and the oil profits
Oh, ring fencing again?
to get a bigger bone. But my question here today is, can you say in which year Guyana will be able to get enough money to fund the budget without taking loans? Is this going to be something possible in the future?
Yes, so that's a good question actually. That so we will, if as I spoke about the dynamic nature of the model last week, I think it was, or a week before. So the financial model. So I said that several things are moving on a daily basis, almost shipment by shipment. It's the price of oil. So if the price goes up, it means a faster amortization from the period when the project was planned. So if it was planned at $50 a barrel, I explain if it goes to $100 a barrel and the payback period was 10 years or five years, it comes down to now 5 or 2.5 years for the payback because the price is double, right? Then, of course, the model is sensitive to volume, which is output. So if you're running at full capacity, unlike some of these places, the FPSOs were rated for like 120 barrel, but they might be doing 130 barrel. That means you're getting more from production from the asset there too, faster payback period. So that, and then the pace at which you bring on new projects to the cost bank. So when you look at all these variables, you look at revenue flow. We believe that the revenue will start coming up steeply. So by 2027 or so, we anticipate it will be close to about $9 billion, up from just under 2 billion now. So what happened? $2 billion is like 1.5 billion is about 20 something percent of our budget now. So you can project yourself how if you utilize, but you're not going to be able to utilize all of it because once you get beyond 5 billion, so then the saving rates start going up steeply. So you're saving 90% of all you collect above $5 billion, saving for the future. But our non-oil revenue, take this year, the non-oil revenue is over $400 billion too. So non-oil revenue is high too. It's more than oil revenue in this year's budget. Oil revenue would be about 1.5, $300 billion, and 400 and something billion dollars is coming from non-oil revenue. So that is over $700 billion, maybe nearly $800 billion or so are coming from those two sources alone. So you can do your own forecasting there. That's why I keep saying that in the outer years you start seeing a steeper growth. That's when you can start addressing the salaries and other things at a faster pace because then the resources start flowing at magnitude. And by then too, say by 2027, if we complete building the gas to energy project, that's not going to be on our books anymore in our budget. The that will be off of the budget. All the highways will be off of our budget. The bridge to across the river, the Demerara River, all of those projects off your budget already because they would have been completed. So you have more fiscal space to do more projects or spend more in another area because this is the building out phase for the country.
Okay. My next question, and I have two more and I'm finished. Kaichun is finished with you. Every foreign company operating in Guyana has been boasting to their shareholders about Guyana's wealth. We see Chevron today says that it's eyeing bigger profits for their shareholders from Guyana's assets. What can you, your party, and the government boast about for the Guyanese people who own the resources?
Okay, so the first question is that I hope that you heard what I said last week about market valuation. So since Chevron confirmed that it's the Guyana assets that they were after. So that meant the $60 billion, because it's the total value of the valuation of the shares, is their S share. The bulk of that comes from Guyana. So maybe 50 of the 60 have come from Guyana. So if 30% of the company now is worth $50 billion, you can imagine what the total company is worth now in the market. That's market, how the market values this. I saw somebody, I don't think it's you, but some clown wrote this in Kaichor News. They didn't know the difference between book value and market value. There are significant differences. That's what price they're traded at. So that I'm pleased about that you're acknowledging that the asset we have here is significantly higher and therefore could be utilized for other purposes. So right now, we are, as I said before, we have a PSA that determines our share of the proceeds. And that PSA, so we are limited by that. I've also explained why we cannot renegotiate now because we will kill the momentum, the investment momentum for the future. So we can't sustain. Remember that depletion when you saw peak oil and coming down, we would not be able to sustain maybe a stable level of production at about 1.3, 1.2, 1.3 million barrels a day. So the agreement is the Stabroek Agreement signed by APNU. We made it clear in opposition. If you look at my press statements in opposition, we're now renegotiating, but we're going to change the PSA, which we have done for other blocks. So that determines our share. Notwithstanding that, so let me tell you what we're getting now. So we're getting about $2 billion, us under $2 billion in revenue, which will grow to about $9 billion a year in the future. Because of the demand for the oil and gas sector, we now see 10 new hotels going up here that would not have been built if we didn't have the demand for travel, etc. We have seen 1,500 Guyanese companies now getting income or worth about 700 million US dollars that is outside of our revenue that they wouldn't have gotten because now through the local content law. We've seen about 6,000 Guyanese now who have got jobs in the sector. These are important things for us. Whether I would have wanted a better agreement in 2016, you heard me criticize it. Even in opposition, we said the agreement, we had moved from a production, from an exploration agreement, we're moving to a production agreement. We criticized the process through which the agreement was signed, where you saw the process outlined in several studies. international studies. They, that was revealed how Trotman rushed it through, that the cabinet didn't even have a clue what they were signing. But we said, notwithstanding all of that, we'd, we'd have to respect this agreement. But we have sought separately to eke out more benefits from this overall agreement through the local content law, which APNU didn't even pass or didn't want to do, that brought not revenue to the state, but revenue to our people, um, benefits. And secondly, and we forced that through because the companies didn't want this, their local content law. We forced it through. They were claiming it would disrupt their operations. We said, fine. And secondly, the free gas, which is a substantial sum of money every year coming to people that will save Guyanese, once that project is completed, in excess of $100 million per year, US dollars per year, in lower electricity bill. So these are additional benefits. But it goes back to my original point, our point about the Stabroek Agreement. Kaichor says ring fence every project. You can do every project because it's governed by the rules of the PSA that was signed in 2060. It would be seen as a breach. You breach that. Look at what has happened in many countries. Look at the loss of momentum, even in Trinidad. And although they negotiated their contracts, really renegotiated, towards the tail end, when the contracts were about, a lot of them were about to be expired to, not right at the beginning when they were about to be expired to. And still you had a loss in momentum. We talk about Suriname. Total has not declared commerciality as yet, and they have not made public a decision to invest. So everybody was saying, oh, Suriname. But Suriname has no project now. And they, until Total makes such a decision, you wouldn't even know if they would have a project. Look at the difference here. How would the 1,500 Surinamese benefit or companies benefit from a non-existent sector? So that's what you need to understand. Those are the things we can say to Guyanese. And we're saying the future, we've changed the conditions now for the PSA.
Yeah, my final two questions.
I
Just
thought
want to
that was the
tickle
final one, all right, but go with it.
you. You spoke about the opposition leader, Mr. Norton, and his secret oil and gas advisors. If they somehow come up with a strategy to renegotiate this contract, would you support them? And do you have it handy costs of the or the lease or the sale price for to the Qatari hotel investors for the 2 plus of land?
No, you can talk to Go Invest about that. You deal with Go Invest because that they would see all the terms of the deal. And also the second one with the the Norton, let him come up with a strategy, and then I'll speak about it. If it's a clongish strategy, don't expect me to support it. If it's sensible and it takes all the variables into consideration, and what are the variables? The variables are net zero, that's a global reality. You heard Lula speak about it. Every country in the world speaks about it. Saudi Arabia speaks about it. UAE, Qatar. And we in Guyana, we behave as though, oh, that doesn't exist, that variable, that, which is a constraining factor for future. So that's a one. Two, the, the paucity of funds now for fossil fuel related investments globally. So there's a huge decline in funds for fossil fuel related investments. In fact, some countries are banning investments in fossil fuel or banks from financing those. So you're competing for scarce funds now. That's the second point. Thirdly, whether it will kill the momentum for future development, and we'll be left with stranded resources that we can develop, like many countries in the world now struggling to develop. I just gave you an example of Suriname. If those three variables are looked at in conjunction with what will bring more to our country, then that would be a great strategy. But we have examined all of them and we have a keener understanding of them. So I hope that Kaichor News will start understanding these three variables too and factor these into your equation also.
And just before I pass the mic to Critic, just to be clear on the assets thing you spoke about, Kaichi News acknowledged, not 100%, because these companies set up subsidy. We still got some
Yes, but
clarifications to make for
but
it.
that, yes, exactly. And I pointed this out myself about the leasing. If they lease assets, it wouldn't be available to the company too. So that you have to discount for all those, but you would recognize there is a substantial sum of money. But I noticed you did not report on this issue. That one, the 600 million guarantee there, two, the 2 billion parent guarantee, the assets available to us. But further, we, before the end of this, we go into recess, you would have a law which obligates the oil and gas companies to meet all of their obligations in case there is a spill. And also for shipping companies to do the same. That we've been working on this parallel to all of this long before even the spill in Tobago. You didn't report that. Huh? You didn't. Oh, okay, because that is a key issue. Now you're obligated by law in the country. So you know when you enter into a country, these are your obligations that are enforceable. So you don't need just the guarantee, but if you don't, you're committing an offense, right? Yeah, that's it.
Dr. Jagdeo, Guyanese critic for Daybreak News. As much as the Guyanese citizens find your schooling of Kaichur News on a weekly basis entertaining, the real interest in high numbers viewing you every week is people's personal interest, development of the country, where the country is going. A lot of companies follow your press conference to have an understanding and reassure them confidence. A number of CARICOM leaders were here. The president of Brazil was here. How does the regular Guyanese citizen benefit from, might not necessarily be in the close future, but in the long term, from better relations with CARICOM? What is behind the scenes? What has the government been working on? This.
So I don't want to go on for too long because a substantial part of what we've been trying to say to people is that we can be short-term in our outlook. We can fall prey to the so-called popular voices, the voices that sound and the arguments that sound very persuasive. Pay all the money out, don't borrow, don't have more green space in the city, all green space, no hotels, no development, nothing. Don't build infrastructure while you're building a gas to energy project. And do it from solar, and then not understand, if you fall prey to that this country is going nowhere, absolutely nowhere, with oil and gas or no oil and gas, that the future generations will have a worse life than we've had, and we're determined not to let that happen. The PP has worked over the years to change this country and to change people's lives from a time when you didn't have housing development to over 130,000 plots of land since we've been in office. 130,000 plots of land given to people, and the regularization of squatting areas and all of these things and building new homes has changed the housing landscape in the country. It happened when we didn't have money, and now it's being accelerated. But if we didn't work on that over the years, where would we have been today? If we had said at the first year, why do housing schemes? Let people rent. Norton said he will support paying rent. You heard what he said, that they will support, APNU will support the rental. We said we want people to own their homes in this country, everybody, and work towards that over years. We had to work to get more children into secondary school. We probably have, between the tops of primary and the tops of primary and maybe secondary schools, we can give maybe a secondary program to over 90% of our kids now. But guess what? The number was in 92, 35%. That meant that 65% of the children who wrote common entrance at that time had to fail. They had to fail because there was no space for secondary program for them to go on to a secondary school. So they used to go to community high schools, and the community high schools didn't do CXC. So that meant the people pull their children out, because if you don't do CXC, you can't go on to get a job, you can't go on to learn more, or the top, they remain in the primary schools, the tops. So 65% of our children aged 10, 11 were doomed to fail by one exam, because the state, we couldn't place them in secondary program. They had to fail. You had to fail them. Today, that has changed. Today, we're spending twice as much as a private education per child. I pointed that out. People pay about $300,000 per school fee per year for their children on average. For private education, we're spending close to $700,000 per child. We could easily give a voucher of $700,000 to each parent and say, you figure out which school you want to send your kids to. Then you don't have to build schools. You don't have to look after classrooms. You don't have to worry about teacher strike, etc. And they would have twice as much money now than they're paying to go to private education. But that represents a commitment. That didn't happen all the time. It moved from 52 billion to 135 billion in the last three and a half years under this government, the education sector allocation. So it was just around 300 million, 300,000 per child. We've more than doubled it. You got to think about the future all the time. When we had almost every cent of debt, that's why when they say don't borrow now, and I look where we have come from, the debt was 9 times the size of this economy. Today, the debt, that the total debt is 22% of our economy. And the external debt, the foreign debt, money that this country owes other countries in the world, is less now than it was in 1990. 1990, it was 2.1 billion US dollars. It's now 1.8 billion dollars. And what's the difference? At that time, the economy was 300 million. Now it's 22 billion. So you're more stable. Our macro economy is stable. Look at interest rates for mortgages. 37% when we took office, 40%. Now you can get for low income maybe a 3.5% and 6% for even a middle income if you borrow a mortgage. So you can start owning things. So I'm telling you this. So a lot of the things we're working on. So you mentioned Brazil and CARICOM. We're looking at short term, so our children getting their grant, doubling old age pension, helping those with disability, increasing public service wages and salaries. So you'd see over the years, you're going to see a massive growth in public service wages already start happening. 30 over $30 billion more we're spending in the last 3 years than 3.5 years than were there in 2020. $30 billion more on wages alone in the public service. So apart from other expenditures, so that's happening. So in Brazil's case, we have to open up new growth poles to keep our prosperity high and growing. We can't be content, they say, oh, oil and gas would deliver the wealthiest country in the world. But what happens with net zero if it starts changing? Should we go back and be like Venezuela where they don't have food? That's what we want for our children. So if we rely only on one sector and kill every other sector, so why do you think now this road is critical? Because northern Brazil is an important growth pole for Guyana. A big market of nearly 3 million people for our produce, them accessing the Atlantic through Guyana, so more business for our ports and our workers here, etc. A major link integrating this. So that's thinking about that growth pole, a growth pole associated with more movement of grains from Brazil, more movement of inputs into Brazil through this road and possibly a port, a lot more business, and also generation of high-paying jobs and income for our people. Food security again with Brazil. We're thinking about processing food. Our cattle industry is not big enough to sustain a regional market. We look at the number of cows now we have in the country. If we have a sustained attempt to slaughter cows and export them, we can't last a month for the demand if we slaughter all of our cows. So the food hub that we are working with to bring Brazil is upgrading maybe the airport through a private initiative at Letem, have cold storage facilities there, process meat and other vegetables and other things there that don't come directly into our market to compete with our people, so domestic production here, and also re-export to the Caribbean, massive markets there. How do we take care of CARICOM market? For that, we need the phytosanitary standards to change, the federal government to give support, etc. The energy corridor. If we can generate from our gas development more electricity to sell to Brazil, then that's a value added because we will generate more money from selling electricity than we can if we utilize the gas maybe just for something else. And so selling power in the future could become a big revenue earner for Guyana through utilizing our gas given northern Brazil. There are tons of benefits. The same thing with CARICOM. CARICOM has always served as a good market for Guyanese products. We need to expand that. So these are long-term things that you have to work on for the future. We need to create more growth poles for wealth creation. Digitization of our economy is a massive area that will create wealth in the future, and a whole cadre of educated Guyanese people in the ICT area where their skills can be globally competitive, they can sell their skills. The minister from Canada came here and launched that program for training. 2,000 people can be trained, they have jobs almost immediately. This is the sort of thinking that you have to have if you want to leave the children something better than we have had. And you can't, just rely on oil and gas. Yes, right.
Samuel Suktandan, NCN News. Dr. Jagdeo, yesterday the government made an announcement for the first credit eligible for use by airlines, and
For the
also
what?
the credits for airlines.
The what?
First credits eligible.
Oh, the credit.
Carbon
Oh, the
credits.
carbon credits. Okay.
Yes, and the Paris Agreement adjustment for Art Issue 3 credit. Can you explain the significance of this milestone?
Yeah.
And also, can you say if there's any interest or do you anticipate interest from the international airlines in terms of the credits?
So, first, we are very pleased that this is we have moved this forward. When when we had our first credit issuance by the Architecture for Red Plus transaction, we were the only jurisdictional scale certified credit. That's the only country in the world where the entire forest is certified by this external body with a rigorous, conservative, rigorous approach to certification of credit. So it's good quality credits that you're getting when they're certified. Now, again, we're now the first credits that can enter into the airline compliant market with the Corsia market. So it's very pleasing to know that we're pushing constantly um, the the goalposts to get to a full compliance market. If you listen to what I said recently and when we launched the first credit, we had this long term strategy. Given that there is no compliance market in the UNFCCC process, and has we've suffered from this for 20 years, the inability, when I say we, I mean the forested countries, to get them to move closer from the Kyoto Protocol all the way to the Paris Agreement, and just recently the COP in UAE, when Article 6 didn't move forward very far. So Guyana decided that it had to have a phase approach, and we can't be left out. We can't wait for the compliance market to benefit from these credits. So we had a bilateral arrangement. Then now we have a operating with a market-based arrangement through the HES deal with willing buyers. Now we have moved it forward to a compliance market, but a limited compliance market. And we are now fighting to have a full compliance market where their credits could be fully traded and the prices can escalate. And we have a built-in mechanism for any for sharing the benefits for any trading in secondary markets. Today we spoke about it, and I was explaining at a meeting with President Lula about the approach. He spoke about the need for us to work together on forests. We only have 1% of global tropical forest. Brazil has much, much, much more. And we spoke about an approach that will maintain the sovereignty of the forest. I said that we're not trading that. And without having intrusive mechanisms for certification, but clear ensuring that standards are met, that we can have a menu approach to preserving the world's forests. Because not every forested country in the world want to go to the full market-based mechanism. And many of them have land tenure issues that complicate this. So I, I would be going maybe to Brazil to talk a bit more about this with with the Brazilian authorities as we move together to try to bring together all the forested countries and ensure that we can public funds are failing us, ensure that we can maybe get more market-based funds at a magnitude, but still preserve the individual approaches that each country may want to take in this menu approach. We have determined that our approach serves our needs best. but Brazil may have a different approach, but still can benefit from resources at a magnitude. So we offered to share what we have done. President Lula said yes, and we'll be working on this more.
This first phase for Corsia, it's voluntary, but I think the second phase from 2027, it's mandatory with the airlines.
No, so mandatory. So we're looking at it. There are two things. The airlines, some countries have to like mandatorily remove or reduce their emissions, remove emissions or reduce, so they can buy offsets. That's from their perspective. From our side, it is it's a the market is voluntary now. We had a bilateral deal with Hess, so we work with a bilateral partner, government partner with Norway. We now have a bilateral private sector partner, and Corsair is now a compliance market for airlines. So how airlines choose to offset their credit, they can choose many different ways. They can do this by buying credits through our mechanism. So it's one from the supplier's perspective and one from the person who has an obligation to offset their emission, which are the airlines. So they're two different things. But we're moving to look at a company maybe that could help market our credit too, because they have some big trading companies globally. But we're not, the benchmark has been set already. We have very high benchmark. So we can reject any price below that benchmark. Thank you.